Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, because if we talk about the future, you guys are the future. It's quite simple. But we cannot understand the future unless we look at where we've come from and where we are right now. The future is where we're going. And the only way you know where you're going is to look at where are you now and where have you come from. About 200 years ago, to go back a little bit, the American buffalo roamed the Great Plains of the United States and Canada in vast numbers. Some of these herds were as big as 1 million, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 million each. In fact, the buffalo was probably the most populous land animal on the planet at the time. The Native Americans were dependent on the buffalo for everything. They would eat the meat, they would use the hides for clothing, but also for their shelter, for their tents. They would boil the bones to turn it into glue. They would use the tendons as bowstrings. They would use everything of this buffalo. Everything was used, nothing was wasted. It was incredibly necessary. And so when the governments of Canada and the United States decided that they wanted to get rid of the Indian, they thought, what is the easiest way to do that is by getting rid of the buffalo. And they did. Terrifyingly successful at it as well. Within a couple of decades, there were 2 tiny herds of buffalo left. 2,000 heads in each herd. That was it. The end of the buffalo and the end of the Indian lifestyle as well. Why am I telling you this? Because we're 200 years further down, we're in a school in Amsterdam. It's because if we look at the present, then we are going the way of the buffalo as well. If we saw Peter van der Glint's presentation earlier today about collaborative consumption, the reason why collaborative consumption is starting to come on the rise is not just for financial reasons, but also because there's a whole bunch of stuff wrong with the way we're doing things right now. About 40 years ago, there was a bunch of very smart scientists who came together in something called the Club of Rome. And they released a report that said there are limits to our growth. And they looked at kind of how is everything going on in the world right now, and how will everything keep going the way it is, and what are going to be the effects of that. And they said, look, more and more people are going to be coming on this planet. In 2050, we might expect about 9 to 10 billion people on this planet. More and more people will be needing food, but the food production will probably not be able to keep up with that. And the pollution that is coming more and more. If we look at CO2 expulsion and climate change, if we look at the amount of pollution that is going on, if we look at the amount of stuff that we are pulling out of the earth to use for our mobile phones, for our clothes, for everything, there's a whole bunch of finite resources, meaning there's an end to them. And we are actually going through that so fast that the Club of Rome, in their report, said, guys, this is going to probably end by about 2035, 2040. Now, this will be a time when all of you guys are still alive, hopefully. We've got about 3, maybe 4 decades at most to solve some of the biggest problems facing the world right now. And otherwise, I'm going to argue there's not going to be a very good future for us. I'm not one of those pessimists that Peter mentioned that say, I'm afraid this is the best it's going to be, because we'll get to that in a minute. But I do think that the possibility of where we're going being a bad place is very, very real indeed. And this is why I'm very happy to be here and to speak with you guys, because you guys are the future. In fact, you guys are also, for a large extent, already the here and the now. What is the here and the now? Because we look a little bit at the future and we've looked a little bit at the past. We've looked at a report of the Club of Rome that says it's going to end. Well, we're stuck in a worldview, in a system that every single one of us are in, whether we like it or not. We're like a frog boiled in a boiling pan very slowly, and we don't even realize it. We are stuck in a system that needs faster things. We need cheaper things. We need more things continuously. Just a couple of weeks ago, the latest iPhone was revealed, the iPhone 5S or C, and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people stood in line waiting to get their new iPhone 5C or 5S, which only marginally was better than the iPhone 5. It needs 0.034 grams of gold, an iPhone does. But in order to get that 0.034 grams of gold, they need to go through at least 10,000 liters of water to get it. The amount of waste material for the 0.034 grams of gold is significant. And we are wasting things. We are addicted to faster and cheaper and more. And that's just not going to last. In fact, there's a quote that I really love that says, anybody that believes we can achieve infinite growth on a finite planet is either very confused or an economist. And that's simply where we are right now. We are stuck in a system that just wants more and more and more. And it's going to end. And let's look even further back than 200 years ago with the buffalo. Let's go back to the Easter Islanders, the people living on a small group of on one island in the middle of the Pacific. There used to be a time when that was one big jungle island, trees everywhere. But the people that were living there cut down every single last tree, and their society collapsed. If we look at the ancient Mayan civilization, they so overreached the possibilities of their society as far as what they needed, that their society collapsed as well. And also the Roman Empire basically collapsed because it was just too top-heavy. It couldn't sustain what it did anymore. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize this thing will just not last. It's quite simple. All you have to do is open history books. Things collapse all the time. Now, this might seem like I am the pessimist that Peter talked about. I'm not. Because the thing is, that's not the only way systems change. All you have to do is open the history books once again, and you can also see that there have been many, many, many times when systems change because people just stood up and said, guys, we don't want this anymore. Just last week was the anniversary of the coming down of the Berlin Wall 35 years ago. I remember that day very well because it was my birthday. And for the first decade of my life, it was 25 years ago, for the first decade of my life, I grew up under the cloud of the Cold War, of possible nuclear bombs coming down, of East versus West. And on my 10th birthday, everyone was smiling. I was like, why is everybody smiling? Not because it's my birthday, but because the Berlin Wall had come down. And if you would have only asked people 4 or 5 months before that whether it would happen, even in the next 10 years, people would have laughed at you. People would have said, impossible. But very, very quickly over the summer of 1989, the whole system changed because there were people that stood up and said, guys, really, we don't want to have this. This needs to change. If you look back further in time, just 2 weeks ago as well was Reformation Day, which is something celebrated in Protestant churches throughout Northwest Europe, which is the day that a man called Martin Luther nailed a whole bunch of theses on a wall of a door of a church in Germany, which is almost 400 years ago now. And with that, he said, guys, the whole system of the way the Catholic Church is working right now is wrong. Let's change it. And a whole change happened. If you look at the revolution in France in 1789, you can see that people started storming the Bastille. They changed the way their system worked. If you look at the future, you also have to look at the past and realize there's a couple of different options that we have in front of us. Either this system is going to collapse, or we're going to have to change this system. Really, there aren't very many other flavors left. It will not keep going as it goes. In economics, you will already be learning, and if you choose to do economics at university, you will hear this word a lot. It's called ceteris paribus, and basically it means that if all the other factors remain the same, then this is the change we can expect. Our entire economic system is based on the principle of ceteris paribus, of, you know, guys, let's just assume that everything else is going to remain the same. It won't. The global poor will become more poor. The global rich will become more rich. We will actually run out of things that are in the ground that we can use. We are going to run out of oil. We are going to run out of heavy metals. We are going to run out of rainforest we can strip. It's very simple. The whole thing will go. And the problem is if we start changing it, once it starts to go, we'll be too late. We'll be like the cartoons of Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. I'm not sure if you guys still watch that, but when I was a kid, I used to watch this comic of a coyote trying to catch a bird, and the bird could run very fast. And every single episode, Roadrunner would run to the edge of a cliff, and he would stop just in time. But Roadrunner wouldn't. But Wile E. Coyote, running after him, would not stop on time. He'd keep running for a while, and he'd run over the edge of the cliff. And it wasn't until he was quite a long way into the thin air that he realized he was over the cliff, and then boom, he would plummet to the ground. That's how our system will go as well, unless we manage to start moving things before it's too late. Our system is going to collapse, or our system is going to be pushed over. This is why I'm so happy to stand here and to stand before you guys, because you guys are the ones that will either let this system collapse, or you guys will be the ones that will actually push it over. Why you guys? Because most of us that are above 30, we're too stuck in the ways that things are going. We're too stuck in the system that we're in. And we need you very, very badly. I'm only twice your age, but I realize this in the work that I do. My work is to be a human rights activist. I speak with companies and governments on a very regular basis to see how can we change this. They're stuck. I'm really not very hopeful that they're going to see the light on time, but I am hopeful that people like you can see that. Now there's a couple of things we can do in that. In our normal daily lives, there's quite a few things we can do. The first thing is we can protest. We can say, guys, this needs to be different. We can use our words. There was a girl in the 1970s called Samantha Smith. She was 9 years old, and she wrote a letter to Yuri Andropov, the chairman of the Soviet Union at the time. And she wrote a letter and she says, Mr. Andropov, why do you guys hate us and why do you guys want to fight a war with us? And the interesting thing about this story is that Andropov wrote back, he says, I don't. We don't hate you, we don't want to start a war, we are also normal people. And that was the beginning of the West starting to realize that there were normal people in the Soviet Union. There were normal people in the Eastern Bloc, and from that moment onwards, Samantha Smith actually got invited by Andropov to come to the Soviet Union. She went on a lot of tours and stuff, and she was a voice of normal reason. She was 8 years old. Sadly, she died when she was 13 in a plane crash, and otherwise she might have been able to make a lot of difference. Our words matter in the things we do. We can use our words. I think that Peter also said, how we spend our money. Do we actually buy something, or do we find a way to share it? But also, when we buy, do we try to buy it fairly? Do things still need to be replaced? It's our words. It's how we use our money. It's how we use our time. Do we actually have the time? Like we saw on the previous film. There's a man that says, look, most people just spend their Saturday or Sunday afternoons going to football clubs. Why don't we spend time doing that, making people happy, doing fun things, or even doing things that are meaningful that might change the world around you, like taking care of lonely people in your street. This city is full of elderly and lonely people that also need help, and there is a way for us to also get involved in that to strengthen the cohesion of our society. And then here's one that I think teenagers will especially like. I think that one of the things we need to do is civil disobedience. When we see systems and structures and institutions that are not fair, that are not lasting, I think it is our responsibility to say, guys, these rules are wrong. Let's change the rules. And by not always following those rules, one of the most beautiful examples of that, of course, is Rosa Parks, the very old African-American woman who about 50 years ago decided to sit in the front of the bus in the United States instead of in the back where the black people were supposed to sit. And she said, no, I will sit at the front. And from that started a whole conversation of desegregation, of creating equal rights for African-Americans as well as for the white Americans. Civil disobedience, I think, is one of the easiest things to do when you are a teenager. So think about which systems are unjust. And yes, I know this is a school, and yes, I know the school leadership will probably not like me for saying it, but sometimes you have to break the rules if they are not fair. Those are lots of different ways to go to change the system. And the last one, and this is very important because all of you are still at the place in your life where you are still got to choose where you are going to go with your life. What do you want to do? And there are major challenges that this world faces, and we need not only your voice, but we need your minds, we need your creativity, we need your intellect to do this. Ailey, who invited me to come and speak here, her older brother John is studying chemistry here in Amsterdam, physics. Why? Because he realizes there is a major problem with the energy needed in this planet, and so he's actually trying to come up with a way to create nuclear fission energy, which is something else than nuclear energy. What it is, it's a very clean way of getting unlimited energy out of things like that. What he's trying to do is he's trying to use his mind to create solutions for some of the biggest problems this world has. I'm excited to be here because you guys are some of the most privileged young people in the country. You guys are going to go very, very far. And the thing I would like to challenge you to do is to go very far in ensuring that we actually all have a future, because we need you for that. And with that, I would like to end with a statement from a very long time ago, about 1800 years ago. A man once said that hope, and hope is so important. Without hope, we're going to lose faith in the future. We're going to lose a sight of God. Why are we doing this? We need this hope. But this man said, hope has two beautiful daughters, anger and courage. Anger at the way the world is, and courage to make sure that it doesn't stay the way it is. Now, the world will not stay the way it is because it can't stay the way it is. That should make us angry. But it should also give us the courage to then say, guys, let's make sure it turns into something very good. The thing is, it can be done because it has been done. We've seen it done at the Bastille. We've seen it done in the fall of the Berlin Wall. We've seen it done when people started nailing theses on the doors of churches 400 years ago. And we can do that again. We can change it because it has been done. And you guys are the ones that are probably really going to make that happen. So let's do that. You know, grab your courage in one hand and your anger in the other and get out of here today and start thinking, how can I actually make this future work for everybody? Thank you very much.